Hello, hello. Good evening to you. Welcome to this live video. This is Sodi here of Blogs of the Kingdom, and today I'm going to be discussing a very sensitive topic and a topic that has been on the minds of many people in the last couple of weeks. And that's the issue of racism. Very difficult one. I've seen a lot on the hi Nicholas, good to see you. I've seen a lot on the social media, on the media, and it seems like that's what everyone is talking about at the moment, and rightly so. So I want to add my voice into the mix, and I hope to hear from you as well. So what I'm just going to encourage you to do is that to share this video with your friends or anyone that you feel will benefit from it. It's going to be a really good time. And we're all here to share our experiences and share our solutions. So I'm going to do that myself as well, and I hope you can hear me loud and clear as well. Yeah, so share the video with whoever you want to join you in this time. I really want it to be an interactive time because racism, I've experienced racism, and most of you have. And it's, even though it's something that has been experienced a lot by the black race in this country, in the UK, and in the Western world, and in the world in general, it's not something that is unique to that race as well. So everyone has an experience to share, whether it's your experience or someone else's experience. So while we're waiting for more people to join us, I'm just going to go ahead and share this live video on my timeline. So feel free to do the same. Share it on your timeline. Share it with your friends. Do a watch party, whatever you want to do. But it's going to be a great time. I believe it's going to be an insightful time because we're all going to contribute to this topic. So if you give me a moment, I'll share my video and then we'll get started. So you can do yours as well. So while you're joining us, please, it'll be good to know who's watching. So if you can just share where you're watching from, what city, what nation, that'll be good. And also, I'd just like people to share their own, what I call breathless stories. We know the sad news of what happened to George Floyd and that now infamous phrase that I can't breathe, and that breathlessness has become a symbol of the struggle against racism. And so I want you to share your experience of racism, if you have any, either to yourself or to some done against someone that you know. That will be very helpful for us because many people in many parts of the world don't really are not very aware of what is actually going on, and maybe many of them don't have personal experiences. So it'd be good to share that. Just let us know where you're watching from, which country, maybe which city, and your experience of racism. So I'm just going to share the video right now on my timeline. You too, feel free to do that as well. Okay. All right. Okay. So, if you're just joining us, my name is Sodi, and today we're talking about racism. I've titled this discussion: Can these breathless lungs, or these lungs of the breathless ones, breathe again? Can we breathe again? And that's my way of saying, can we really eliminate racism? Can it be a thing of the past? So, if you're just joining us, it'll be good to hear where you're watching from. Just allow a couple of minutes for people to join us. It's good to see one or two people on the video. Yeah, be good to have you. Good to see you, Nicholas. Just share, introduce yourself. It's difficult for me to know who's watching, but I think it's going to be a great discussion. So my plan is to share a bit of my story and also hear from you guys your stories on racism and also hear your suggestions of how we will be able to minimize, eradicate this great evil. So while we're waiting for others to join us, for some of you who haven't followed my Facebook page, I'm a person of faith. I'm a believer in Jesus Christ, and I always like to start my live videos with prayer. So I'm just gonna pray now, and feel free to join me. And as I said, share the video with friends. Heavenly Father, really just thank you for this time. I thank you for what's in a sense, I thank you for what's happening around the world now that people are talking about justice and people are talking about correcting these ills of society. Racism has been a lot around for a long time and it has crushed a lot of people. It's made it impossible for a lot of people to just have a normal life. But Lord, I thank you that you've spoken through the mouth of many prophets in the last year, saying that 2020 will be a year of justice. And so it's really great to see it playing out. So, Lord, we ask that this time will be a fruitful time of discussion. It'll be a fruitful time of just sharing our hurts from this evil, but also looking on the bright side, looking at solutions and helping each other to understand this issue better. So, Lord, we ask that you come and be with us through your Holy Spirit as we discuss in Jesus' name. Amen. Amen. So good to see you. You're welcome. If you're just joining us, just type in the chat, let us know where you're watching from. The topic today is, can the lungs of these breathless ones breathe again? I plan to just share a bit of my own journey or my own story. Most of you will know that I live in the UK now, and I'm originally from Nigeria. And so, like you, I saw the George Floyd story break out on media, on social media, and I couldn't summon the courage really to watch the video, but I saw the pictures, and it completely wrenched me. It completely yeah, it was just that sickening feel, and and maybe no one would have predicted that this story would have gone the way it's gone, because this is not the first time things like that have happened. But as God will have it, it's gone global now. People are campaigning for justice. Politicians are listening. People are, some people taking the laws into their hands. People are very passionate on social media. It seems like everyone, maybe it's the whole coronavirus thing, that everyone seems to have more time now to really address this issue, to really hone in on this issue, to really focus on it. And there's a sad turn of events that happened to that man. We know that he wasn't a perfect person and he had a criminal past, but no one deserves to die like that. No one deserves for his life to be cut short like that, and everyone is redeemable. And so it's really sad that happened, and happened in the hands of law enforcement officers who are there to protect life and property. It's also, for me, I also find it hard to 100% conclude as well that the action of the policemen were necessarily racially motivated. I would say, yeah, I'm like most people. I have erred on the side of it was racially motivated, just because of the way he was manhandled, and you felt like the life didn't mean much, or there wasn't much value placed in the life. But it's difficult. You see, the thing with racism is it's difficult to always pinpoint people's motives, because it's something in the heart. And so except someone expresses a racist a racist word or phrase, you know, the fact that a white person does something bad to a black person might not always mean that it is racially motivated. Just like you have people who do bad things, but in every ethnicity, you have it in white and black people as well. So it's a tricky one sometimes, but many times when it's racially motivated, you do know, and it comes across, and it's usually seen in the way such a person will treat other people of a different skin color, and so it's a sad turn of events. But I really believe that God is using it to bring some good. I believe that we're asking questions that we've never really asked before. I believe that we're raising our voices. People are speaking out, not just black people, but other people are speaking out and asking questions. And I believe the leaders in the various countries in the West, especially, beginning to take note because the signs of racism are all around us, and these things are happening every day. I'm a black person, and I'm not immune myself to that. I moved to the UK in the early 2000s, so quite modern times. And right from my first few days in the UK, I could already sense racism, really. I remember just minor things like, people staring, at you in funny ways. I remember being at the university cafeteria, and there was this lady who was behind the till, and she stared in a very funny way. It's difficult to put it into words, but she stared at me. I wasn't paying attention to her. I think I was looking somewhere else, and it's funny because sometimes when someone is staring at you in an unhealthy way, you kind of know in your intuition. And so I just looked up immediately in her direction, and it was quite quick the way I looked up, and there wasn't time for her to take her stare away. And I saw the expression in her face, and she quickly switched to what I'll call a typical British smile, or maybe Southern England smile, which is like very curt, very short, very sweet, polite, but not necessarily the most friendly. And I immediately felt uncomfortable from that experience. So that's just a minor experience, but and then you have experiences where you go. I started out studying in the UK, so you go to university. You're trying to make friends with other colleagues, other students, and you know some of them from white backgrounds. And I remember one of them just making ignorant comments like, "Oh, where are you from? Oh, you're from Nigeria. Oh, yeah. There's a war there, isn't it?" I'm like, there hasn't been a war in Nigeria since 1967. So it's things like that. It might not necessarily be racism, but it's just ignorance. It's just you realize that a lot of people behave and say things and make judgments based on how they're conditioned through the media, through the movies, just through the books they read. So, because I came from Nigeria, this guy assumed that, it comes from Nigeria. Oh, that's Africa. Well, there are wars everywhere. So, there's a war in Nigeria. And I was like, well, we haven't fought a war since the 1960s. Even the UK had been involved in a war more recent than that. So, things like that, you begin to wonder, well, are people not aware? Are people not exposed? Are people not well read? And you begin to feel uncomfortable, and just things like where people just don't want to have a normal conversation with you, but just want to always talk to you about where you're from, and how different you are from them, and so these are the things that I experienced on the minor side very early in my time in the UK. So if you're just joining us, we are talking about the big issue of racism. I'd like you to type your experiences as well. It's not just me. Type your experiences in the chat if you've experienced racism, if you're from a BME background as Black and Asian minority ethnic group background. Type your experience. If you're a white person and you've experienced racism yourself or you've seen it in action, type your experiences. We all have stories. I really believe it's important to bring these things to the light, bring them to the light. The reason why we're talking about justice now is because people had smartphones, were able to capture this man being trampled on the feet. And so we are now exposing it, bringing it to the light, as the Bible talks about bringing things to the light. So that's why I'm sharing some of these stories, which I've never had cause to share before. So from my university days, I ended up working in a utility company for a brief spell, and I remember I just started out as a temp, a temporary staff in this utility company, doing nothing intelligent, just some simple job, and then, there were other openings in this company, and I applied for one of the openings, and I went for an interview, and while I was at the interview went well, answered all the questions to the best of my ability. And then towards the end, the lady asked me, "Is there anything else I'd like to ask or say?" And I said, well, I'm not sure when the job offer will be made, and I know, um, if I'm successful, there'll be a job offer made, and there might need to be some training. Just to let you know that I have already booked a holiday in Rome at a certain time in a few weeks' time. So I just want you to know that in case this offer comes early. And anyway, to cut the long story short, I got offered the job, and I was told I had to attend the training. And surprise, surprise, the training was right in the middle of my planned holiday. I booked the accommodation, the tickets, and everything. And so I had to write to the HR department of this company, and I said, "Thank you so much for my offer, but I'm sorry. I can't attend the training on this date because I've already booked a holiday, which I did mention in the interview. And can I attend at another time? Are there going to be other trainings and things like that?" Anyway, you will be very surprised what happened. I Not too long after I wrote that email, I got an email back from the lady saying, "Thank you for your email. We're now unable to offer you this job anymore." Basically, she just said, "We're taking the job offer back because you can't attend the training. See you, goodbye." And I was like, wow, is this how people behave in this country? I was really shocked. I was shell shocked. One moment you're offering me a job, and I remind you that I went on holiday. I was supposed to go on holiday because of the training, the clash. And the next minute, you're taking this offer away. And it was a horrible experience. And I said, why is this woman treating me like this? Like I have no rights, like I have no, I'm not important at all. And I was very sad. And I'm someone who doesn't like injustice. I don't like to be cheated, and so there was something rose up in me as well. So I said, no, I'm not gonna tolerate this, and so I decided to write a letter to a strong email to the woman. But I spoke to my line manager, and I said, who was a white guy, and I said, this is what happened. I'm going to take it up. What do you think? And he says, I'm with you. I'm with you in this. And I was very encouraged. So I wrote a strong letter, and I said, look, I narrated the events, I recounted everything, and I said, you know, I ended up by saying, I expect better from you, and I expect this to be sorted as soon as possible. If not, I will not hesitate to take it up with the higher authorities in the company. And she came back and said, "Oh, sorry, your job is still there." Uh, uh, but you could tell that she was very angry that I challenged her. And I got that feeling because it was something that because I was a black person and she was white, and she felt like, how dare I challenge her? But she'd done something wrong. I called her out on it and she was very angry. Anyway, and then not too long after that, I get another email from her. She'd gone digging into my file looking for things that might not be, how will I say, anything that wasn't right in my file, so that she would find a reason not to offer me the job. So she went into my file looking through for it, and she saw my passport. And at that time, I had two passports because my passport had finished, and I had an old passport and I had a new passport. And the old passport had like the old visas and work permits and things on that one. And the new one had the new papers and visas and work permits. Anyway, she saw the old one with the old stuff, and she was very happy. And she sent me another email saying, "Oh, so the real shame. We can't offer you that job anymore because you don't have the right papers to work in the UK." And I said, and in my mind, I just laughed. I said, "This woman is really desperate, isn't she?" And I wrote back and I said, well, if you check further in that file, you see the other passport with all the papers you need. So please prepare my offer letter. I'm keen to start. I'm keen to come for the training. And anyway, so I'm just sharing this story for you to see that these things are everyday things in the UK. It doesn't make them right, but I've gone through them myself, and it's no mean thing to go through, because it's one thing to be judged on performance, judged on how you're performing in the business. It's another thing just to be judged or treated differently because of your skin color or ethnicity. So anyway, I wrote back and said, look, sort this. I've got my papers. Look properly. You see it there. And she sorted it. And then later on, you find that hi San. Later on, I was given the job, and I went for the training. And during the training, it was conducted by some colleagues of ours from the HR department. And I was getting the eyes, I was getting the looks, I was getting bad mouthed, not calling my name, but, the person made me know that they were not happy with me. Why? Because I challenged a white person who had done something wrong. So this has been my experience in the UK. Even that was, I would say, maybe an average experience, but that was my first experience in a work setting. And then in another work setting, this time a much more complex job, an engineering business where I was working. I immediately found myself again face to face with this monster called racism. I've grown up in a well looked after family. I've always felt loved. I've always done well in school and in work and things. So I've never had anyone judge me much on anything else apart from my performance, which was usually good. But anyway, when I got to this company, initially everything seemed normal. And then suddenly I found myself being frozen out of anything to do with work. My ultimate boss in the company would not assign any projects to me. He never wanted to, and I couldn't understand why. I wasn't even given an opportunity to prove myself. And you know, with time, it made me go into my shells. It made me withdraw because I didn't feel wanted in the business. And I could remember, I'm normally a social person. I would just stay in the office and not talk to anybody because when I tried to ask for opportunities, I wasn't getting any. And it was all just purely down to racism because there were other people who joined the company at the same time with me, the different skin color, and they were getting all the opportunities. They were getting, the projects, they were getting engineering work, and I was not getting anything. And I was surprised because it's not like I'd even done anything good or bad, but I was already adjudged before I could even lift a pen. I was already adjudged to not be good enough. I remember having one of my numerous frank chats with my boss then, and I said, "Look, I want to get into something. Give me something to do." And he was like, "Well, the clients have their criteria, and what I came to understand was that the reason why he was one of the reasons why he was treating he had his own prejudices as well, but one of the reasons he was treating me that way was because he felt that the clients would not accept me, that if he put me on a project and the clients saw this black guy on the project, the clients will remember, will think that I wasn't good enough, and that would reflect badly on the company. So he stopped short about saying that, oh, you need to be white for me to put you on in front of the client. But he said, look, the clients have their requirements. That was the way he put it, and I can't always tell you everything about what it was. So there I was. I was just there, sitting in the office day in day out. I felt useless. I felt unworthy. I felt just completely frozen out for no reason apart from how I looked, and so I withdrew more and more. The more I was frozen out, it became so bad. We were in a team meeting one day. Everybody was busy with work, and they were looking for people to take on some extra work. And so my boss was looking around, said, "Who? We've got this new jobs coming. Who's going to take it?" And one lady and one of my colleagues said, "Well, Sodia doesn't have anything. Why don't you give it to Sodia?" And he just kind of looked around, looked past, and he was looking for anyone else apart from Sodi. And I was just like, I just felt, and that was in my presence, and I just felt like, wow, what can a man do? And then it was so bad that my immediate um, superior in the company, he knew that I had something to offer, and he felt like it was because my boss wasn't having enough visibility of my work. So there was one time when it came to a head where he just said, "Look, Sodi, you've done great work. Why don't you go to the boss and show him the work you've done?" You know? So I go to the boss to show him the work I've done and say, "This is the work," like a piece of paper. I go to the boss, I say, "Boss, I've done this and done this. Have a look and let me know what you think." And as I'm giving him the work, as his before his hand even touches the work, he's shaking his head like this, shaking his head, and he's like flicking through, and he's not reading anything. He's just shaking his head. "So this is wrong. This is all wrong. This is wrong. This is wrong. This is wrong. This is wrong." And I was just looking at him. I didn't even know what to say. And I said, "Well, um, it's interesting you say it's wrong. The reason I did it this way is because this other guy who's my supervisor, the other guy is a white guy who he loved." I said, "This other guy asked me to do it this way." And he said, "Oh, did he ask you to do it this way?" I said, "Yes." He said, "Why didn't you say so? Why didn't you say so? You need to say, you need to stand your ground. You need to be strong. You need to stand your ground. Why didn't you say so? That's okay if he had asked you to do it that way." And I went away from that meeting thinking, so if he says this is the way to do it, then it's okay. But if I do it that way, then it's wrong. And at that point, I knew that there was nothing I could physically do to impress my boss. And it took a miracle. I'm not joking, a real life miracle to change things around. for me in that company. I thought about leaving every day, but I couldn't leave because I knew that God had sent me to that company. I knew that, God had led me to that business. I knew that's where I was supposed to be. And each day I would pray to God. I said, God, take me out of this place because my confidence is just draining every day. Not because of anything I've done, but just because of, people's prejudices. And anyway, in the end, God will answer the prayer and will turn things around. Cut a long story short, in 1 year, we lost a lot of senior staff. And suddenly, Sodi, who was not good enough to be trusted with even doing anything, had to be given something to do. And as God will have it, I excelled in the first few tasks I was doing and actually with groundbreaking results for the business. And I remember the first time my boss saw it, his mouth was literally open. He couldn't believe. So that will tell you how far his prejudice was. He just never believed anything good could come out of me. I remember I overheard him discussing with another manager, and he's saying, "Look, these Nigerians are useless," and nothing. There was no expectation. It was like I started out on negative, on a negative setting. My other white colleagues came in, and they were already close to 100%. I was like minus 100. I had to prove that I wasn't useless. Whereas the others started out being thought of very useful, and they had to do something really, really bad to um, to negate that. So these are some of the these are some of the travails I went through. But as God will have it, things will turn around remarkably, like I said, through really miraculous incidents. And the same boss who was racist towards me in the earlier days, he would end up appointing me to lead the management of that company. And again, with that, I experienced a lot. I experienced a lot of racism. I experienced some of the white guys who were there as well didn't couldn't cope with the fact that a black person was leading the business, and so that was really difficult. But I kept my head, I kept my focus. As God will help it, we performed very well in that year, and my boss later would learn that actually what he thought that if you put me in front of projects or in front of clients, white clients, they will be hesitant to give us the work or to continue with us. Actually, it ended up being false because when I started having opportunities, by God's grace, I would be influential in probably one of the most successful years, if not the most successful year of the company. And so I'm not saying that to blow my own trumpet, but I'm just saying that that's how things turn out. But it really hurt my confidence. I would go through days crying. I'll go to work crying. I'll come back crying. In my heart because it was horrible, horrible. I've never experienced such a thing before. And horrible, horrible experience. So I'm just sharing this with us especially for those of you who have not experienced it. This is real, guys. It's something that happens. It ruins people's confidence. It damages people's sense of belonging, sense of identity, and everything flows out of that. And then when people react, they say, "Well, okay, they're reacting. I knew they were useless anyway," and they're reacting, but it becomes almost like a self fulfilling prophecy because when I was in that business, when I was being frozen out, I just withdrew. I didn't show any enthusiasm. I didn't show any energy towards it because no one believed in me, not because of what I'd done or not done, but just because I was black. No one believed in me. Well, the boss, the people who mattered didn't believe. And so it was it was really difficult. I never experienced something like that before. And so that was for me probably the most major experience I've had. And then when I was in management in the same business, I would see experiences when we're trying to recruit people. I remember we were trying to recruit for a position, and there was this black guy who came in, and he completely wowed everyone. I was involved at the later stages of that interview process, and we all were clapping for him. His presentation was fantastic, and that was his second interview. But my colleague who was handling the interview, a white guy, he just felt, well, let's ask him to come back again. I'm not sure about him. I'm not sure he'll settle down and all these kind of things. And I looked at him. I said, "What are you talking about? I've been in this company and I've seen people come in and go for interviews. I've never seen anybody as good as this guy. And you want him to come back for the third and the fourth interview, you know, because he's black." I didn't say that, but in my mind I thought that. I said, "No, he is the best we've seen. Give him the job." And give him the job and pay him his due. Don't undercut him because he's black. Give him the job. So, and if not that I was involved in that decision making, they would have frustrated the guy's life to that. But he was the best engineer I'd ever seen come in for an interview in all the time I spent in that business. So I'm sharing these things, guys, again, just to say these things happen. Many of these things are things that have passed. I've forgotten about it. I've forgiven a lot of the people. A lot of the people are my very good friends today. So I'm not saying this from a place of bitterness, thank God, but I'm just saying that these are real life experiences that people have. And we need to be sensitive to these things. I mean, I remember traveling to South Africa for a friend's wedding, and we're just there. It was in the kind of white areas of South Africa, and we're having dinner, and there was this lady who was from South Africa, a white lady, but also I think has links to the UK. And she asked, "Oh, where are you from?" And I said, "From the UK." And you could see her frustration. She was like, "No, I mean, where are you really from?" And I was just like looking at her, like, it was almost like frustration, irritation, everything. And I was like, "Well, if you're asking where I'm originally from, I'm from Nigeria." Uh, and then she said, "Yeah, that's what I mean." And and I just thought, it's, it was almost like immediately you felt left different. It's almost like someone is trying to establish difference with you by all means, and yeah. So these are some of the stories, and I share these things just to say that you might not experience it. Maybe if you're from a white background, you might not notice it very much, but these are things that that happen. I'm just looking at some of the comments. Hi Stan. Yeah, we discussed some of this in Tumen, yes. And he doesn't care what skin colors we come from. Yeah, absolutely. I don't care as well. Wow, thank you, Stan. Great, 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 great to see you. Yeah. Oh, my wife, my babies. Yeah, thanks, babe. And Nicholas, yes. So yeah, keep your comments coming if you've experienced racism, if you have seen anyone who's experienced it, if whether you're black, white, Asian, minority, whatever you identify with, put your stories there, put your breathless stories there. Let's bring these things to light. It's really important that people become aware, because by bringing it to light, that is how we see some of these things. And good to see Stan there. He's one of my best friends, my best friend in Russia, really, and he's a great guy. He's completely colorblind, and you know, so these are the experience. These are my breathless experiences in Europe, and these experiences not just peculiar to Europe. I mean, when I went to Germany as well, I got the stares here and there. I mean, I remember, you know, there was this German village I went to with a group of friends, and they were all friends. They were all white, and I was the only black guy there. But it doesn't matter to me. I'm colorblind to such things. But I remember we were talking and about stuff, and I was laughing or just fooling around on the streets. I can't remember what I was doing, but I was kind of making fun with them, and we're just having a good time. And then one of my friends said, you know, so everybody's looking at you. And I looked around, I didn't even notice that people were looking at me strangely. And I looked around, I was like, wow, all the eyes, and this happened like in a kind of uh, consumer area in Germany. And, immediately it kind of makes you want to um, go back into your shell. You feel like, wow, the eyes are just looking at you as if, suspiciously. And it's good to see Stan here as well, my friend from Russia. Even in Russia, I mean, I'm usually someone who is comfortable in his own skin. Like I try not to see color. I mean, I've been to Russia several times, and sometimes I feel so comfortable there. Like sometimes I go out, I come back late at night, 11:30, and I'm not very good with the language, and I'll go on public transport sometimes as far as my eyes could see in the underground. I'll just see white people, but I don't feel uncomfortable. I don't feel afraid. But every now and then, even in Russia, sometimes I remember, my friend here who's on the chat stand. We he took me to a nice place, a nice village somewhere, and we went and had a good time there. And I think we went swimming or something, and and we are just hanging out. And again, I had the stares from these people, and I remember my friend getting angry, and he said, "What the f is wrong with these Russian people? Never seen a black person before." And I just laughed it off. But these are minor incidences. But again, it's just things that we need to be careful about. Just little things like that can make people feel uncomfortable, feel like an outsider, feel unwanted, feel breathless. So that's what we're talking about when we're using the slogan, I can't breathe. Breathing signifies life. It signifies living. What we're saying is that a lot of black people, a lot of ethnic minorities struggle to just have a normal life, struggle to just be treated normally, like people. I mean, even, I'm sorry to say, even in churches, I've experienced this. Sometimes people like for me, like a black person, sometimes in white majority churches, sometimes people treat you like a project. They treat you like a special case. You're like, okay, I kind of have to, almost like an experiment, I have to tread carefully, and I need to talk with you, because you're very different, and I have to speak to you differently. I have to do a lot of different. And don't get me wrong, there's a place to be sensitive to people's cultural backgrounds, but sometimes what people need is just normal relationship. Just normal. Just treat people normally as you treat anyone else. If you try to make people too special just because of few differences they have with you, then you make them feel uncomfortable. You might mean it for good, but you actually make them feel uncomfortable. So it's important that we don't box people, we don't categorize people. We don't just think, oh, black people, they all black people think the same way. Just like you have, you know, just like you have in white people and other ethnicities, you have a variety of thoughts, a variety of people, a variety of thinking among black people. So let's not categorize people, let's not box people. Yeah, my cousin Tricia just posted, it's easy for us not to see colors because we're brought up to become in our skin. The black person who was brought up in other continents have a different experience. It's sad. Absolutely, absolutely. And what I would say is, again, sometimes with multi-generational people who are black, it differs. It differs. So, for example, I grew up in Nigeria. I'm not from a generation that directly experienced colonialism, and so my generation has more of a stronger sense of identity than, say, my dad's generation when it comes to racism and colonialism, and so. But what you see in America, especially among the blacks, is that they are lacking that identity. They don't feel like they belong, and identity is the center of everything that flows out from people. So, and so that's why it's really frustrating for them, and in a lot of the indices they are behind, and in a lot of the crime rates they are high up, and it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy because they lack that sense of belonging, and the society needs to give them a sense of belonging, sense of identity for them to really find themselves. So, but these have been some of my stories. I really want to hear our stories. Yeah, my cousin Abia says, yes, true. I've had my fair share of these sad experiences, but by God's grace, I'm still standing. Absolutely. We need to keep standing. We need to press through. It's not easy experiencing these things. Nana Waka says, I've experienced similar issues, bro. Keep believing in your talents and keep God close to your heart. Absolutely. I agree 100%. It's difficult. There's nothing that demotivates you like this, but we need to be keep being positive. We need to keep standing. So these are my breathless stories from Europe, from the UK. But um, unfortunately, it's not. These are not stories that are unique to the West or the UK or Europe. I've had breathless stories even growing up in Nigeria. So where I grew up uh, in a black dominated culture, we had these kinds of prejudices as well, in a very different way, but they were there. So, I mean, for example, when I was in primary school, we had children from minority backgrounds. Some were Asian, some were mixed white, some were white. Very few of them, and with kids, we were just ignorant, but we would categorize them, we would box them. So every East Asian child was Chinese, whether they were from Japan or Korea, we all call them Chinese. We're just ignorant, but what I'm saying, friends, is that these things happen in different cultures, in different formats, and we need to educate ourselves, expose ourselves. But that was how it was in those days growing up. Every Asian child was East Asian child was Chinese. Every West Asian child was Indian, whether they were from Sri Lanka or Bangladesh or Pakistan. They were all Indian as far as we were concerned. And it was, now I look back, I just think, oh, such ignorance. And I remember in primary school, some kids would follow some of the other minority kids to the toilet sometimes, waiting when they finished to go check their poo, whether it was the same colors as ours. It sounds funny, but silly things like that. And you see, so even with kids, you begin to find that they become aware of these differences very early, and they think, okay, because the children are different, then they have, you know, they're completely different, and then we'll talk about the Indian kids and how they always smell of garlic and all this type of things, and we'll make fun, as kids do. But a lot of that was ignorance. A lot of that was we were not taught, we were not exposed to different cultures. So I'm just sharing this to reflect that it's not just a Western problem, it's not just a UK problem, it's a human problem. It's a human problem. Even in Nigeria, I experienced tribalism as well. Now, tribalism, I call it the evil twin of racism. It's virtually the same thing. You treat people differently based on their tribe, based on which part of the country they come from, based on what language they speak. I remember when I finished university in Nigeria, when I was in university in Nigeria, I got an internship in a big energy company, and I was to go and serve in an engineering department. And the way you got posted was you went to this recruitment office, and they will send you to the engineering department. And I kept going to this recruitment office, and the man who was from the Yoruba tribe, he kept telling me, "Oh, there is no positions available, no positions available." So I had my letter. I couldn't work anywhere. And meanwhile, other young students were coming in and speaking Yoruba, and they were getting positions, and I was just there, and he kept saying, "Oh, sorry, I can't help you," and I just felt completely helpless, completely useless, because he kind of made a decision to favor the Yoruba speaking students, and I was just left there, and nothing was happening. And it took intervention by someone who worked in an engineering department in Shell, and he called him and said, "Look, we have gaps in this department, so they send him here, let him come and work for us." But if not for that intervention, I would have been going and coming every day and being told there was no position, all because of tribalism. So, friends, this thing is not just a white problem. It's not a black problem. It's not an Asian problem. It's a human problem. It's a human problem. You see, racism, we all have the ability to be racist. Sometimes I've seen people say, put things out, oh, I'm happy I'm not racist. I thank God I'm not racist. We all have the ability to be racist. We do. Anybody who feels they don't have the ability to be racist, you're deceiving yourself. We all have the ability to be racist. And this is why we need to be careful. Even in the UK, even among whites, you see the people treat people different. Sometimes you see that there's this kind of thing, this southern England versus northern England. Sometimes you see the Scottish versus English prejudice. You see prejudice in the UK even based on accents. People have different accents. I remember I think it was Steven Gerrard, one of these footballers. I remember asking someone, well, why doesn't he become captain of England? He plays so well, and and they say, well, his accent is Liverpool Scouse accent. It's not. It doesn't sound cool and all that. So friends, what I'm saying is this prejudices is a human problem. It's we all have that capacity to to go down that route, and that's why we all need our hearts to be searched. We all need Christ, really, because it's ultimately in Jesus Christ that we can be free from these things. I've been seeing many people post things and say, well, children are not, people are not born with racism, that they're taught racism. In a sense, I agree with that because there's institutional racism, and that's how a lot of us are taught and conditioned. But in one other sense, I believe that we're all born in racism. We're all born in it. The Bible says we're all born in sin. And so I remember having a conversation I think it was last year or a couple of years ago with my second daughter, and she was about 3 then. And she was telling me, well, I'm going to have a house party. I'm going to invite this girl from my nursery and that girl from my nursery and this girl from my nursery, and they're going to come and we're going to have a party and I'm going to have a sleepover. I'm not going to invite this other girl because and this other girl that she said she's not going to invite is actually her best friend, a white girl. And she says, I'm not going to invite her because she's peach. Children, they use the actual color. She's peach. She's not brown girl like the rest of us. So these ones I'm inviting because they're brown and they'll come to my house party and we'll have a sleepover. And I was asking, I said, but why aren't you inviting this other girl? She's your best friend. Yeah, but she should be invited by other peach girls. This is for the brown girls. I'm inviting only the brown girls for my house party, and you know, and it was interesting just to listen to my daughter say these things, and I was almost dumbfounded, like where does this come from, and where is she getting this from? But for me, it kind of made me realize, this thing, the Bible says we were conceived in sin. Little children begin to notice differences and they can play on those differences. And even, my first daughter, I remember one time she went to school and she's in a predominantly white school. I remember when we went to look at the school, we saw only like two black pupils there. But anyway, that didn't stop us from going there. But I remember she went to school one day and there was this lady who came in to do some like street dance fitness type teaching. She was an ad hoc, not an ad hoc staff, but someone that just came in for special classes from time to time. And anyway, the lady was black, and so my daughter came and said, "Well, we had this instructor, and she came and she taught us." And she's brown like me, and she kept saying she's brown like me, and I could see the joy in her face because the school doesn't have any black teachers, and so for her it was important to see that actually a black person can actually be a teacher, can be an authority figure, can be someone that has that responsibility. And so you could see that it meant a lot to her. It gave her a sense of belonging. So I wouldn't class that as being racist, but I'm just sharing this to say that even children notice color. Even children notice color. And I remember being told, not being told, but a Spanish boy talking to his mom in Spanish. One time I was on the train and he looked at me and he ran to his mom and he was speaking in Spanish and said, "This man is as dark as the night. It's as dark as the night." And I didn't know the meaning of what he was saying. And I asked my friend then who understood Spanish and she told me and I just laughed. But the point I'm making is these are children. Children, they say what's on their mind. They don't hide, they don't pretend. But as we grow, we can allow these differences or we can focus on these differences and use it as a way of being prejudiced against each other. And that's what we have to watch out for. So the point I'm making is at the end of the day, racism is a human problem and it's a problem of the heart. No, no politics or policies can ultimately solve it. Okay, no policies or politics can ultimately solve racism because it's a problem of the heart. You can stop actions, you can stop people from acting racist, but what they're thinking in their heart, politics and policies cannot change that. It can't change that. It can't change what people nursing in their heart. So even if they don't have racist actions, if racism is in their heart, you haven't ultimately eradicated it. But having said that, it doesn't mean that we shouldn't do anything. I'm really encouraged by all that is going on in the world around us. I'm really encouraged by people calling for justice. I'm really encouraged by all the actions that are being taken. Of course, not the violence and the illegal ones, but the actions of change that are being taken. So there's a place for us to do our part. There's a place for us to do our part in advocating and fighting for justice, putting pressure on the institutions, on the authorities to do something. Look at even football we watch in the UK. You've had many players of black and Asian minority origin playing football in the Premier League, for example, for years now, but very few coaches, very few managers from that sector. So these are the things people are now beginning to ask: why must it be so? Why must it? Why is it that the Sol Campbells of this world, the Ashley Coles of this world, the Rio Ferdinands of this world are struggling to get those jobs, whereas the Gerrards and the Lampards and the forgetting all their names now. They're getting the top Premier League jobs, the top jobs. Why? Why they were all contemporaries? Why do these ones seem to have an easier path to the plum jobs? So these are the issues. These are the issues we need to address. And so there is a place for us to take action. And I'm really glad and I'm grateful to God that action is being taken. Putting pressures on authorities is important, but also what we do individually is important. And this is where I want to really encourage us, myself included. Let's do what we can to understand each other. Let's do what we can to take interest in ethnicities that are different from us, that are that have these differences. Let's actually make an effort to befriend them. I remember, one of my black friends from Nigeria visited our home some years ago, and he was like, "This place you live in, are there any black people here?" I said, "Yeah, maybe one or two." And he said, "Well, I could never live here." I said, "Well, I don't have any problem with it." So, and for me, that's deliberate. I mean, I remember when I first came to the UK, I went to a church that was predominantly white, and during my membership interview, the elder was asking me, "There are many black churches here. Why did you go to any of them?" I said, "Well, I was coming to a predominantly white country. I want to understand the culture here. I want to be contextual where God has sent me. So it doesn't make sense for me going and spending time in a Nigerian church. I know all about that. I want to know British culture. I want to know how things work here. And so that's why I came to, and I'm spending time in a predominantly white British church." So it's things like that that we can take steps to say, okay, yeah, my friendship circles, what can I do to expand my friendship circles? How can I take interest in people that don't look like me in terms of skin color? How can I learn more? How can I read more widely? How can I travel more widely? How can I watch different movies from different places, from different continents, and not just be fed the usual Hollywood, things? How can I expose myself more? How can I learn more? And so there's many things that we can do. We can speak out against injustice where we see it, where we perceive it, whether it's affecting us directly or not. It's important to speak out against it. So, okay, why? You ask questions. Why is it that we have so many black people in this organization, and only white people seem to get to the top? Why is it that we have so many black people in these institutions, and only white people seem to get to the top? We ask these questions, whether you're black or white. Ask these questions. Does it mean that the black people are not good enough? They're not intelligent enough? Ask the questions. All we're saying is, people should be given the same opportunities. It shouldn't be made easier for a certain set of people, and made more difficult for other sets of people. So there's a lot I can talk about it, but let's keep talking. I'm looking out for stories that people are going to share. I think I've said enough myself. I just want to end by saying that really, it is only in Christ that people can breathe again, really, because this thing of racism is a thing of the heart. It's a thing of the heart. You can stop the actions, but if someone hates you because of your skin, it begins from the heart. And if you stop the actions, it doesn't necessarily stop the heart. And this is where, we need to pray. We need to really share the love of Jesus Christ to people, that it will break their heart. It would melt the hearts of people to have compassion, to have love, to not focus on differences, but to focus on similarities. Many of the things we talk about racism today, it comes from people focusing more on differences. The differences between people of different ethnicities are very few. The similarities are much greater, but we choose to focus on the differences. And so it's important that we change our mindset. And this goes for my white friends especially, but for black friends as well. We need to change our mindsets. Some people, they just say, "Oh, this person, I can never." I've heard even black people say, "I can never trust a white person." And I've heard white people say, "Well, I can never fancy a black person." The black person is not my taste. Just things like that. These kind of mindsets, we need to get out of those kind of mindsets. It's whatever, wherever it comes from, we need to get out of those mindsets. And things that promote that kind of mindset, whether it's things in the media, whether it's movies. I thank God that now movies are being pulled out of Netflix and HBO and all these kind of things. We need to take such drastic action because these are how people are conditioned. These are how people get their worldviews on. These are how people treat people differently. So I want to see what we're chatting. I want to open up now, just for you to share your stories. I really want us to be open, guys. I've shared my stories, a few of them as I could remember. Share your stories if you've experienced racism. I just, I just want to see. I just want us to see, and many people are watching to really learn from people's experiences. Um, it could be something as little as people, just being ignorant, asking you silly questions, to really bad things like excluding you from a promotion or not giving you the same opportunities or not thinking that you're good enough before you've done anything good or bad. Things like that. I just want to hear your stories. You can keep them short and sweet. So let's just share the stories. I'll just give a moment, see what people are sharing, and then we'll discuss. Also, I want to hear solutions as well. If you can share your solutions, how can we end this problem? How can people breathe again that have been suffering for years? What are your solutions? Solutions at an individual level, solutions at institutional levels. Uh, just type in the chat. I'm really interested to hear what you think people can do. Also, if you've suffered or you've seen someone suffer from this as well, type in the chat as well. So in the next few minutes, I'm hoping we can get some discussion. Also, if you've got questions, type in the chat. I might not have all the answers, but I'm sure someone here will have. Nana says it's time we changed and recondition our mindset as humans, regardless of regardless of our various backgrounds. Ignorance is the greatest disease to befall mankind. Absolutely. The funny thing is that a lot of these things come out of ignorance, sadly. A lot of it comes out of ignorance. I shared, early on with people asking me silly questions. And a lot of it comes out of ignorance, and the ignorance conditions people to expect people of certain ethnicities to behave a certain way. I remember when I first moved to the UK. I was studying in university here, and after we got the first few um, university coursework back, and I got, I think I was one of the highest in the class, the third highest. And so I was comparing we were all kind of looking at our scores, and I was comparing with, some of my colleagues. And there was one of my white colleagues, when he saw my scores, he was like, how come, and it was like a loaded how come, and I was like, what do you mean how come? And I just felt in that it was almost like a lack of expectation and shock at the same time, and I could feel like it was more like, and I asked him, I said, how do you mean how come? And he didn't know what to say after that, because it was almost like it had shattered his expectations that I would do so well and I'll do better than him. And so he was surprised, because maybe he thought I came from Africa, and the image and things that he'd been given about Africa was was completely backward. And so when I came to the UK and I was one of the top performing people in the class, he was surprised, And so these are some of the paradigms people have. They are fed to them through movies, through news, lopsided reporting, through books, through different kinds of things. And it's important that we change these narratives. Stan says, when I used to visit in US in 2008, I thought that I became racist because black people there really disgusting. But finally, I understand that it's not about racism. Yeah, yeah. I mean, many people, even in the US, sometimes you find that those who are African migrants as well sometimes have a bit of friction with those who are African American because, you know, sometimes the African migrants are accused of acting white. And you see, there's that issue. For me, I think the US problem, there's a deep issue of identity crisis for me around the black community. When I say black community, I'm talking about the black American community. There's a huge identity crisis, and there's a deep work that needs to be done there. And so what you find is a lot of the African migrants that go to the US, they tend to do better because they're coming from a more secure place of identity. They're living in a black dominated society. They've been living in a black dominated society for years, and you know they've not experienced racism, maybe they never experienced colonialism. So when they go to the US, they see it as an opportunity. They work hard and do well, and they're usually well read, whereas in a lot of the African American communities, there are not so many good examples for them, and so that kind of thing, that racism perpetuates itself. So there's a deep work that needs to be done in terms of identity reorientation, sense of belonging, um, that really needs to heal that segment of society. It's not enough just about physical health, but there's a lot that has to be done to restore the psyche, to restore the confidence of that community. Angela just said, I really want to talk to you about this more because of my kids. Yeah, I've experienced racism, but I don't think any of it has scared me or scarred me because of how rooted I am. Because I grew up in Nigeria, I didn't experience any racism until I came to UK. I was older, and so I coped. I just don't know how my kids will cope. That's a good point. They're oblivious at the moment and they are loved by most people. I just don't know when is the right time to talk to them about it, as I don't want to shatter their confidence. You see, this is a problem that a lot of people of black ethnicity have in the UK, in places like the UK, because we always afraid about what our kids will experience because we've experienced it ourselves. So we think, how can I prepare my kids for this world that they're going to face? Many of you who are my white friends, you probably don't have to deal with that. You don't have to think of how can I fortify my son or daughter so that they're strong and they don't allow this get to them, you know. And so it's a very valid question, Angela, and it will be good for us to chat. For me, what I've tried to do is me and my wife, we try to give our kids lots of confidence. We've tried to encourage them to appreciate their beauty. We love on them. We try to make them feel responsible, and we try to make them the best at what they do, you know, to the best of their abilities. And so I thank God that by His grace we have confident kids. But I'm not naive to think that they will have an easy ride through school, through university, through working life. But my prayer is that with their deep roots in God and with them coming from a loving home, confidence in their veins, they'll be able to overcome whatever society throws at them. But we hope that society will be much better with all that is going on, with all the fights and all the campaigning, and we hope that tomorrow will be better for them. Okay. My cousin Abin says, in having to manage other people, engineers predominantly white, I've had to work twice as hard to build my teams. Thankfully, once these colleagues have got past their prejudices, they have enjoyed working for me. Absolutely. Absolutely. I remember, like I shared my own experience, work experience. I had to I had to do really groundbreaking work to be able to be considered just a normal good worker, you know. My other white colleagues started out with being considered as fantastic. I started out with being considered as hopeless. And so I had to really work doubly hard just to get on the same level, you know. And so I know what my cousin is talking about. And the prejudices are there. I mean, I remember one time when things had turned in one of my former employers, and I was now in a senior position. I was in management, and we recruited a new guy who was going to be in management as well, a white guy. And I remember, walking past him in the hallway, and I just said hello to him. And he was quite new, so he didn't know who was who in the company. So when I said hello to him, he did a typical British kind of snobbish response and smile. And it was a response that he didn't even say anything. He just responded in like, who are you kind of response. And anyway, he was surprised to meet me in the management team meeting and realized that I was someone who had a lot of influence as well in the business. So that was a bit of surprise, and his greetings changed after that. But yeah, it's just things like that. You see that people expect you to be the cleaner or expect you to be the I don't know, the janitor or something, and then they might be surprised to find out, oh, well, you're actually educated and actually you can bring a lot to the table. So the question is, where are those assumptions coming from? Where are those kind of assumptions? Where are we getting them from? That's what we need to address really, to really bring this problem to the absolute minimum. Stan says we don't have such problems in Russia at all. We have the word nigger, which is not bad. It's equal to black, but we don't call black people black. It sounds very rude in Russian. So generally, we don't understand these problems. Well, Stan, you're my friend. I probably agree with you because I didn't experience too much in Russia, but maybe you guys don't have a lot of black people as well, so that might not be as much of an issue to you compared to, say, in the UK or in the US. But I hear what you're saying. I love Russia. One of my best places on earth, and I always love going there. I feel 100% comfortable, don't feel threatened whatsoever. So great to hear that, Stan. Yeah, they do, black people do arouse interest. So Nana has asked the question. Let me leave you with a question. How do we see the world to be in the next years to come, if we can somehow overcome these current global issues? Nana, I'll, that's a loaded question, and for me, I really don't know. But I'll be interested to see what others have to say. Definitely, I feel 2020. I was just reflecting the other day, and I just think how different. If you just put if you had a picture and this picture was 2019 and this was 2020, you will look at them, and if nobody told you that these 2 years were next to each other, you will think that the years were like 10 or 20 years or 100 years apart. That's how much the world has changed in 2020. All that's happening now. So for me, I think we're already seeing a different world, and we're going to see a very different world. And I hope that some of the difference will be good differences, because now I'm seeing things that I've not seen before. People tearing down statues, people tearing down emblems of racism, demanding that certain movies be taken out, and I'm hoping that it will mean that our children would have a better future in terms of a better acceptance. They will have level playing field. They won't feel like they have to overcome more hurdles just to achieve normal success. And so for me, I'm hoping that that will be in the future. As for the COVID thing and the restrictions and whether how that will leave us afterwards, I have no idea. But it's definitely going to be a different world. That's my feeling. Angela says, what do you think about including more Black history curriculum in school? Absolutely. I agree 100%. Not just in schools, but in libraries, in bookshops, in movies, in things that are available to people, and with the knowledge that Black history is not homogeneous. It's not. It's no just we use Black history as a convenient way, but in Black history you've got African history, which is very, very varied and very dynamic and very rich, and you've got Caribbean, and you've got different, Black American history, Black British, Black history is huge, So one thing we have to be careful about when we're trying to restore justice is not to pigeonhole things, not to box things. So for me, I would say yes, let's have more Black history curriculum in schools, but instead of putting it into a special box called Black history, let's just call it history. Let's just call it history. In the libraries, put the Black history books, put more Black history books, but don't give it a special category of Black history. Just put it in history. Let the children have a rounded education that reflects, you know, everything that is good and that has happened in a balanced way. You know, so don't. I would say don't pigeonhole things. Don't put labels, because that's the problem sometimes when you put Black history and you pigeonhole it there. Then only those who the blacks are interested will look at it, and those who are from other ethnicities will think, well, that doesn't concern me. Put it in the history. If it's a children's book, don't say, oh, Black children's book. Put it on the children's book. Let all the children have access to it, because it will broaden their understanding. It would develop their knowledge. Yeah, it will develop their knowledge, and it will give people acceptance. Angela said they should not be too special, so it's not making Black kids feel uncomfortable. Yeah, absolutely. Sometimes we feel the way to solve the problem is to focus on this particular demographic and give them an attention. But sometimes that has an opposite effect, because what people want to be treated as is normal. They don't want to be treated as a special case, and so we have to be careful. They want their culture, they want their views, they want them to be reflected in normal mainstream culture. I remember watching a video one time, and I think it was Morgan Freeman was being interviewed, and they were asking him, what do you think about Black History Month and things like that? And he says, you know, like, I can't remember the exact words, but he says it's rubbish, and he was like, well, they don't have White History Month. Why should we have Black History Month? And it made a case, and so I kind of agree. For me, in the past we've had Black History Month, and it's 1 month where we kind of do things. Let's just have it as history. Let history be rich and varied and include um, activities and messages from Black culture as well as other cultures. So I think that's what people are asking for, just to be treated normally, not to be treated differently. So I really want to thank you guys for all your comments. Wow, I stayed much longer than I thought I would. This is an issue that is long, and I'm sure that it would continue. I just want to pray before we finish for today. Um, I just want to pray for anyone who is currently going through prejudice in their workplace or in any institution they are part of. Yeah, Father, I just want to thank you for these ones who've been watching. There's two people that I feel that have been watching. One person, you're working in the health sector, and the other person, you're working in the educational sector. And I feel that you felt like a ceiling has been placed on your head, placed above your head, and it feels like you can't grow in this organization beyond a certain level. And You know that it's because of your skin color. You know that it is because you've seen some of the people who started out the same time with you, different skin color. They've advanced more than you. They're not more intelligent. They don't work harder. You know it's because of your skin color. I just want to pray for you right now. I just feel the Lord will say, "Be hopeful. Be hopeful." I feel like some of you you've given up hope. You've given up hope. You've gone into resentment. You've gone into bitterness for good reason, but you've given up hope. I feel that the Lord will want to rekindle your hope again. I want you to believe in yourself again and believe in Him again, because He would say to you, even though I've asked this question, can these lungs breathe again? He would say to you, yes, you can. Yes, you can breathe again. Yes, there is hope. Yes, you can live again. You can have a normal life. And so I just want to encourage you with that. And I pray, Lord, that you bless this people, you open up the right doors of opportunity, and you help them to replace resentment with love and acceptance. And for those who have excluded them, that you help them turn a corner as well. In Jesus' name, amen. God bless you all. Really great chatting about this. Keep your chats coming in the chats, even though I'm going to end the video now. If you've experienced racism, share it in the chats. If you have a solution that can end this, or that can at least minimize it to almost insignificance, type it in the chat. Really good to hear what everyone's idea is. God bless you all. See you around next time when we'll be going live. Take care and stay safe. Bye bye.